David Webb is a football recruitment specialist, and David has stopped by because we've got a bunch of things to speak to him about. David, good morning to you.
Good morning.
That just shows, David, how important the right recruitment is. And part of Orta's job, presumably, was to make sure the right players come into the football club. And we've heard from Leeds fans this morning, David, saying to us, that has not happened. Orta's paid the price. Does it surprise you?
Yeah, I think player recruitment's paramount for any football club. Recruitment of your head coach, recruitment of your staff, and recruitment of players. So I think you have to have an alignment and a vision and a process. And somewhere along the lines, if you keep chopping and changing, and obviously recruitment changes fundamentally with that, it can cause a little bit of disruption to the football club.
Well, you've worked at Bournemouth. You had the role of head of recruitment there. You moved to Tottenham. I think you worked with Poch, didn't you?
Yeah.
Mauricio Pochettino. Yeah. And the administrator, someone I know well, Paul Mitchell, in actual fact. You also worked at Palace. This man's beloved Crystal Palace. Did your paths cross? You look far too young.
No, I was an academy coach under 10s when Simon was there. So,
yeah.
No, we never. I see him in the distance, but we never actually crossed.
You saw him in the distance, okay.
Best way to see me.
It's worked well for Bournemouth, has it not? Because we've seen Gary O'Neill was on the show yesterday. I mean, is it hit or miss, to be honest, David?
It can be. I mean, when I was at Bournemouth, I was fortunate enough to work with Eddie Howe, and I think what well for us there is we had a pure understanding of how and what type of players we wanted to bring in, because Eddie had been there for a while. So it was understanding his philosophy, his processes, and his alignment within the club. So we had sort of a clear remit, if you like, of what type of players that would be suitable for Bournemouth. And I think if you've got that clarity as part of a recruitment team straight away, it definitely helps.
Do you think they didn't have that clarity of late at Elland Road?
Potentially, yeah. And I think, like I said, the chopping and changing of managers don't help, because I think when you're recruiting players under Bielsa, he will like a certain type of player. Obviously someone who's very physical, very athletic, that can play his type of football, because it's very, very demanding. When you chop and change that, another manager comes in and he inherits that group of players.
Yeah.
And then if you haven't got a transfer window to put that right in between, then he has to work with those group of players. So during that time, you have to adapt your recruitment model, and given the sort of time that manager's got to last, then potentially you want to try and steer recruitment towards that. So
what's the preference, David? Do you want the manager involved from start to finish in recruitment discussion? Or do you prefer to freestyle it once he says, here's a guy that we might be interested in?
I think at the beginning of the season, you look at your squad, you look at the balance of your squad, and you think, okay, these are potential areas that we might need to recruit in. We might lose these particular type of players during these windows. And then obviously you try and allow for injuries and stuff like that. So all this should be really done in the summer recruitment market, and your business, the main bulk of your business done. So your January transfer window really should be just sort of a need, if you like. So it's very exciting for the fans, but and being involved in that process, it's very stressful, because you're at the mercy of the market. Because if you do become, you do need a player, it becomes double the costs.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that you're in a desperate situation, so you're sort of behind at that point in time. So I think if you're well prepared and well planned, obviously, and trying to account for the variabilities, all you're trying to do is just tip the balance in your favour, really.
Yeah. Is that the way you try to do it at Palace, Simon? Like summer, the important time?
Yeah, you don't want to be... I mean, in an ideal world, I mean, I describe it regularly and repeatedly that the bastion of bad business is January, when you're chasing it. And more often than not, you can point to exceptions. You can point to Suarez at Liverpool, and you can point to Virgil van Dijk at Liverpool, but those are the exceptions that don't prove the rule. I'm looking at some of the stuff that you've done, David, and am I assuming that at Ostersands you were with Graham Potter?
No, I came in after.
Right.
I came in after.
But as a whole, some of the managers that you've worked alongside and worked in conjunction with would be considered to be sort of progressive managers that have got an evolutionary think to the way that football should be done. At what point would you envisage, or have you experienced, the owner or chairman of a football club started to get involved in the selection process of players?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the final decision making, when I don't think, in my experience, that they've been involved too much in the build up of that during your process when it comes to the money side of things. Yeah, when you got to come to talk about contracts and agents get involved, then they become interested.
But as far as selection is concerned, I'll tell you why. It's a leading question. You've been at Tottenham,
yep.
And the accusation is repeatedly and endlessly that Daniel Levy is front and centre on player acquisition. And I always make the case, not because he's my friend, that's ridiculous, that really he's at the back end when it comes to the money. Can you speak to that in terms of your experiences at Tottenham?
Yeah, Daniel did like to play sort of a hands-on role in that.
What do you mean hands-on, David?
I would say that when it came to that final phase, he liked to know what was going on.
Yeah,
he would like to have a say. He would like it to be at a certain price point.
But as far as player selection based upon talent,
yeah, he had an opinion, and I think sometimes that could cause a conflict of interest.
Interesting.
But when I was there with Poch, I think Poch, especially in probably the second year, because he'd done pretty well, had more of an overall say. So it became down to his decision. Who had the last word? Poch.
So there we go.
Which is kind of half my point.
Yeah.
Dan's a little bit more involved than I anticipated the answer to be, but notwithstanding that, the head coach has the final say.
I mean, at any time did an owner like Levy or the chairman like Levy say, no, do you know what, not him?
Yeah. I think there was cases when we was at Tottenham, we had players in the building that maybe we should have potentially signed and would have helped Poch at that time. That we didn't go through various aspects. Sometimes I wasn't always privy to the finer details of that, but there were questions being raised that I think sometimes that if we'd have acquired that player at that certain time, it could have steered Tottenham in a different direction at that time.
You see, that disproves what your belief is.
Yeah, it does. I would suggest that decision, and again, it sounds like I'm putting words into a space where Daniel Levy can defend himself, and it's not my job to do so. That would more often than not be a monetary-based decision. When you say players in the building, you mean players that were already at the football club that needed to be signed on better contracts, or are you talking about players that were being brought in to sign and then subsequently fell out because some way or another they couldn't find an accord?
More players to sign.
Right.
And for various reasons, they didn't get over the line.
That's interesting. That's interesting. And your position in that, David, is you've got to go with the flow, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
You've done your part.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very frustrating because I think during these aspects you always look at there's a lot of work that's being done behind the scenes, and if you do your job properly as a recruiter, and I was at Tottenham, my role was sort of head of elite, so it was 17 through to the first team, so because of the way Poch liked to play, that became sort of a big area for recruitment. So I think once you've done all your due diligence, all your work, all your data, all your processes, meet with the agents and package it up and presented it, and then obviously it goes over to Rebecca, she was head of football at the time, and then to Daniel, and then Poch is involved in those conversations as well, then it becomes sort of down to them to execute it over the line.
Okay. This is interesting. This man's been about. I mean, as I said, Bournemouth, they're after Tottenham. Have you got a little exclusive for us? You've been talking to Celtic?
No, not yet.
Because I know for a fact your name has been linked with Celtic.
Okay.
As a potential new sporting director. You're aware of that?
No.
No. You will fold under questioning.
Yeah, no. Honestly, I wasn't aware of that at all.
Jim White and Simon Jordan, Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app, and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.